Most people assume they're mentally strong until they're thrown into a situation that shakes every fiber of their being. The truth is, the real test happens when everything around you starts falling apart. An unbreakable mindset isn't something you're simply born with. It's something you shape and refine. The ancient Stoics understood this better than anyone, and in this conversation, we'll uncover how you can cultivate that same inner fortitude. We're about to discuss 10 clear signs that reveal whether your mindset is as solid as you think, or if there's room to strengthen it even more. Before we go further, I'd really appreciate it if you liked this video. It helps spread this powerful Stoic wisdom so others can benefit as well. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so now. Activate the bell to ensure you never miss any future discussions on Stoicism. Ready to find out what these 10 signs are? Let's begin. Sign number 1, you control your emotions. Weak minds react. Strong minds respond. That simple truth highlights a major difference between those who bend under pressure and those who learn and grow from it. Think about the last time something rattled you, a cutting remark from a friend or a sudden setback at work. Maybe you felt a rush of anger or panic, and before you knew it, words flew out of your mouth or a decision was made without careful thought. When the dust settled, you might have regretted the haste of your actions. In those moments, it's easy to feel like emotions take charge rather than the other way around. Imagine being in the middle of a heated argument. You can feel your heart thudding, your face warming up, and your mind filling with all the retorts you could throw back. It takes real effort to pause in that instant, to breathe, and to respond without letting anger decide your words. Yet that brief pause can change the entire outcome. Stoics recognize this, emphasizing the power of noticing emotions rather than letting them run wild. By taking that small window of time to evaluate what's unfolding, you give yourself space to act with intention. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those words underscore the idea that no matter how much turbulence surrounds you, the true battle unfolds within your own thoughts. If you train yourself to stand back and observe the rush of emotions rather than diving headlong into them, you're already on the path to a more resilient way of living. The aim isn't to numb yourself, but rather to recognize and harness emotions without letting them rule your reactions. Now consider the online world we traverse daily. Social media can spark strong feelings in an instant. One blunt post or heated comment can trigger outrage, jealousy, or anxiety. It's all too tempting to hammer out a furious reply or to brood over negative feedback until it seeps into your mood for the rest of the day. Next time you sense that urge to respond impulsively, pause, breathe, and remember that you always have a choice. A steady mind evaluates whether something genuinely deserves a response or is better ignored. Each moment you practice this moderation, you tighten your grip on your emotional well-being. Think back to a recent situation where emotions nearly seized the wheel. Perhaps it was an argument with a close friend, a challenging shift at work, or a heated exchange on social media. In that split second before you responded, there was a chance, no matter how small, to pause and let calm reasoning guide you. That opportunity is always within reach, but it demands awareness. Whenever you catch yourself tensing up or feel your pulse racing, try to recognize that surge. Acknowledge it for a moment, then decide what truly benefits you in that moment. This exercise strengthens a mental muscle that can become a vital asset. For the next day, try to pay close attention to how often emotions demand to be let in. When someone criticizes you, do you lash out or go silent? Or can you pause, even briefly, to steady yourself and respond calmly? That pause might feel unnatural in the beginning, but it becomes an invaluable habit over time. Instead of reeling from regret later, you gain the opportunity to act in alignment with your principles. That's the heart of what Stoics taught. Choosing your interpretation of events, rather than becoming a prisoner of them. This skill doesn't bloom overnight. It's a process of reminding yourself to remain alert. There will be times when you slip, say something you wish you hadn't, or notice you're drifting back into old ways of reacting. That's part of growth. Recognize those moments, learn from them, and press on. Each stumble is a fresh chance to sharpen your mindfulness. Your mind evolves in small yet meaningful steps, and those steps build on each other until self-control becomes second nature. Controlling your emotions is a key foundation for an unbreakable mindset. When this foundation is strong, challenges lose their power to unnerve you. Instead of knocking you off balance, difficulties become opportunities to hone your composure. You start to trust your ability to remain calm under stress, which boosts your confidence in any situation, be it a tense family gathering or a jarring turn of events at work. But managing emotions is only one piece of the puzzle. There's another layer to establishing true mental toughness, and it involves stepping willingly into discomfort rather than shrinking from it. We'll explore that idea in the next section. Sign number 2. You embrace discomfort. A comfortable life makes you weak. A difficult life makes you unstoppable. It might sound harsh, but those who train themselves to handle discomfort develop a resilience that can't be faked. Think about any time you tried to avoid a tough situation. Maybe you kept quiet in a stressful meeting at work or sidestepped a personal confrontation that felt too intense. Each time you choose comfort over growth, you end up reinforcing the idea that discomfort is the enemy. Yet the ancient Stoics believed something else. Hardship is often the best training ground for the mind. Take Seneca, for instance. He would sometimes practice voluntary poverty, sleeping on a hard surface, wearing simple clothes, and eating very plain meals. By stepping away from luxury, he reminded himself that comfort can be as much a trap as it is a pleasure. He wasn't doing it to punish himself. He aimed to prove that he could cope with less. When you willingly expose yourself to small hardships, you discover that the fear of discomfort is usually worse than the discomfort itself. Stoics understood that true peace isn't found in perfect external conditions, but in a mindset ready to endure whatever comes. We live in a world designed to make daily life easier. Food deliveries, online shopping, and countless devices streamline our routines so effectively that many of us rarely face any real obstacles. But that convenience has a hidden cost. When everything is easy, we lose the ability to handle the unexpected. The first time adversity strikes, it can feel overwhelming. You see this effect when someone's car breaks down and they have no idea how to manage public transportation or solve the problem on their own. Or when the internet goes out and suddenly productivity grinds to a halt. A mind unaccustomed to challenges tends to crumble at the slightest disruption. It's important to remember that seeking difficulty doesn't mean destroying the comforts you already have. It simply means introducing moments of controlled challenge into your routine. Perhaps you decide to take cold showers for a week, or wake up an hour earlier each day, or skip that sweet treat you normally indulge in. Whatever you choose, the goal is to step outside your comfort zone in a deliberate way. Over time, these small acts of courage add up. They remind you that you can handle more than you think. And once you build this mindset, life's unpredictability becomes less intimidating. Imagine someone who dreads social interactions and always avoids crowded events. If they decide to attend a small gathering, it feels uncomfortable at first, heart pounding, palms sweaty. But after a few minutes, the fear starts to fade. By the end of the evening, they may even find themselves enjoying the conversation. That's the power of turning toward discomfort rather than running from it. Each time you face something you'd normally avoid, you prove to yourself that discomfort is survivable. More than that, it's a doorway to growth. You become stronger, more adaptive, and more confident in dealing with a wide range of situations. When the Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, they weren't trying to show off or earn moral points. They were strengthening their capacity to remain undisturbed by external factors. If you can sleep on a hard floor out of choice, imagine how you'll handle the times you have no other option. If you can skip a meal without panic, you'll be calm in scenarios where you can't eat for a while. It's about building a mental armor that can withstand inconvenience, scarcity, or even crisis. Of course, nobody expects you to throw away your bed or your favorite foods indefinitely. The point is to gently push your boundaries one step at a time. Doing something as simple as a weekly fast or a morning jog in cold weather can teach you a great deal about yourself. You learn that discomfort is temporary, and once you've endured it, you carry a sense of achievement that warms you from within. Whenever life hands you an unplanned difficulty, you won't be as rattled because you've already proven you can manage adversity on your own terms. If you want to start small, here's a suggestion. Pick just one area of your life where you can add a little challenge every day. Maybe it's refusing the snooze button on your alarm. Maybe it's leaving your phone behind when you walk around the neighborhood. Or maybe it's taking a brief cold shower in the morning. Notice how your mind initially protests, coming up with reasons why it's not a good idea or how it's too hard. That's the voice of comfort, clinging to familiarity. When you push past that voice, even in small ways, you begin to understand the remarkable adaptability hidden within you. There's a deeper benefit as well. Once you realize you can survive and even thrive amid discomfort, you become less reliant on external conditions for happiness. That sense of self-reliance can't be bought or faked. It's earned through repeated practice of facing the things you fear. Over time, you'll see that challenges transform from burdens into stepping stones, giving you a reservoir of inner strength to tap into whenever you need it. Stepping outside your comfort zone isn't a one-time event. It's a habit you cultivate, a mental stance that tells the world you're not afraid to struggle for what you value. And with every small challenge you overcome, your mindset grows more unshakable. There's more to this mental fortification, though. Once you've started accepting discomfort, it's important to look at how the approval or disapproval of others can secretly shape your thoughts and emotions. That's what we'll discuss next. Sign number 3, you don't seek validation. If you live for approval, you die by rejection. That statement might sound dramatic, but it holds more truth than most realize. We often measure our worth by how others perceive us, through compliments, likes, or friendly nods of acceptance. The problem is, when you let these external markers define your value, you put your peace of mind in the hands of everyone around you. One person's disapproval or criticism can send you spiraling because you've outsourced your sense of self to the unpredictable whims of others. The Stoics had little time for this kind of emotional surrender. They believed that true strength comes from within, rooted in your own understanding of what's right. Epictetus famously said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought." "You foolish and stupid." It sounds a bit harsh, but his point is simple. Stop obsessing over what others think and focus on living by your principles. Trying to please everyone is an endless race because you never know how people's opinions might shift. By the time you earn one person's praise, someone else may criticize you for the exact same behavior. If you're constantly chasing validation, it's like running in circles on a track that has no finish line. Imagine the power you'd have if you could break that cycle. Think about social media, for instance, where so much of our self-worth is tied to numbers on a screen. Likes and comments might give you a quick thrill, but it fades fast. And if you don't get that expected positive feedback, you might find yourself feeling strangely low. Now, picture a different scenario. You share something meaningful to you, a piece of art, a personal story, or an insight, and you genuinely don't care how many people clap or comment. Your happiness isn't determined by their reaction, because you posted it out of sincerity, not for applause. That kind of independence is invaluable. It's not that Stoics dismissed all human connection. Far from it. They simply prioritized living according to reason and virtue over the fleeting satisfaction of social acceptance. They recognized that opinions come and go, but your character is what remains. If you dedicate yourself to doing what you believe is right, guided by thoughtful reflection rather than people's immediate reactions, you become less fragile. When someone disapproves of your choices, you can evaluate their viewpoint calmly. Maybe they have a valid point, or maybe they're speaking from their own bias. Either way, your emotional equilibrium stays intact because you know who you are. Think about how this principle applies in everyday situations. You might be at work, hesitant to propose a new idea because you fear criticism from your colleagues. Or maybe you've kept silent about a goal you have, like starting a small business, because you worry family members will laugh or discourage you. When you shrink away from taking action, you confirm the power that outside opinions hold over you. But what if you move forward regardless of potential backlash? Sure, you might face doubts or negative remarks, but you'd also discover that your sense of self didn't collapse under disapproval. That's a huge step toward emotional freedom. Here's a simple challenge. For one day, don't ask anyone for approval, whether it's over what you're wearing, a decision you need to make, or an idea you're brainstorming. Instead, ask yourself if it aligns with your values and serves a meaningful purpose. If it does, go for it and observe how liberating it feels to step forward without waiting for a nod from someone else. At first, you might notice a tinge of anxiety. After all, we're conditioned to seek reassurance. But as you proceed, you'll likely discover a sense of relief, realizing you're capable of navigating your path using your own moral compass. Choosing self-reliance over external approval doesn't mean ignoring every piece of feedback. Constructive criticism can help you grow, and praise can be encouraging. The difference is that when you aren't chasing these things, you're free to consider them thoughtfully, accepting what's helpful and discarding what's not. That's the Stoic spirit in action, maintaining an even keel regardless of whether people cheer or condemn. It's about taking responsibility for your actions rather than letting other people's changing moods dictate your worth. This is a gradual shift. You might find it easier to start by noticing situations where you typically crave a pat on the back. Maybe you glance around the gym to see if anyone notices how hard you're working out. Or you hesitate to post a photo because you're unsure if it'll get enough likes. Recognizing these urges is the first step. Once you spot them, ask yourself, would I still do this if nobody ever acknowledged it? If the answer is yes, then you're acting from a place of inner conviction. If the answer is no, that's a sign you're seeking validation more than you might have realized. Over time, you'll see how liberating it is to base your actions on principle rather than trying to please every person around you. A mind that isn't shackled by the need for constant applause will stand strong even when faced with criticism. It won't crumble because it's not built on the shifting sands of public opinion. That's the essence of what Stoic philosophy aims for, a deep sense of self anchored to reason, virtue, and inner stability. Once you're less entangled in the chase for validation, you free up mental energy to tackle bigger challenges. And speaking of challenges, there's a key concept in Stoicism that involves facing one of life's greatest certainties with calm acceptance. Let's look at that next. Sign number 4. You accept death and fate. One day, you will die, and that's your greatest power, It might sound grim, yet it's a truth that can set you free the moment you learn to accept it. Reflect on the fact that every tick of the clock brings you closer to an eventual end. Instead of letting that realization overwhelm you with dread, the Stoics believed it could be harnessed to live more fully, with clarity and courage. Memento mori, remember you will die. This phrase reminds us that time is limited and the way we spend it matters. The reality of mortality can spur you into embracing each moment and not wasting energy on distractions that lead nowhere. It's a call to evaluate what you hold dear, how you treat others, and whether you're spending your days in line with your core values. When you keep death in mind, you become more deliberate in your actions, more appreciative of your relationships, and less anxious about things that hold little lasting significance. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who could have easily been consumed by power or fear of losing it, often reminded himself that life is fleeting. In his private writings, he frequently mused on how each person's existence is a mere blink in the vastness of time. This wasn't an attempt to sink into despair. On the contrary, it was a tool to maintain perspective. He recognized that by holding death close, he could focus on what truly required his attention, instead of getting swept up in trivial matters or personal vanity. Picture yourself in a moment of everyday frustration. Maybe you're stuck in traffic, or you're dealing with a minor disagreement that's spiraling into something larger than it needs to be. Now imagine pausing for just a second, taking a breath, and saying to yourself, "This irritation is temporary and so am I." That simple shift in thinking might feel jarring at first, but it also can snap you back to the present. It encourages you to ask, is this issue truly worth my peace of mind? If life is short, do I really want to spend valuable hours locked in anger or anxiety? For those who practice this perspective, death becomes less of a terrifying endpoint and more of a motivator to live with purpose. By accepting the transient nature of existence, you also learn to accept life's twists and turns, knowing you can't control how long you have, but you can control how you use the time you're given. This acceptance lessens the sting of things that don't go your way, because you've realized how minor many problems actually are in the face of mortality. A cancelled plan or a harsh word from someone else might bother you, but when weighed against the preciousness of your finite time, it's easier to move forward. One exercise often suggested by thinkers influenced by Stoicism is to write your own eulogy. How do you want to be remembered by those closest to you, or even by those who only knew you briefly? It might sound morbid, but this practice provides a powerful jolt of self-awareness. If you find yourself scripting out achievements that are only about material success or social status, you may realize those don't truly resonate with your deeper sense of purpose. Or you might discover that what really matters are the ways you've impacted others, shown compassion, or stood by your principles. Accepting death and fate doesn't mean you expect doom around every corner. It means you cultivate gratitude for the simple privilege of breathing, feeling, and acting in this world. Instead of taking your loved ones for granted, you appreciate the moments you share, because you understand they won't last forever. Instead of delaying your dreams or waiting for the right time, you make the most of now, acknowledging that time is not guaranteed. That mindset frees you from the fear of failure or the opinions of others, because you realize life is too short to be governed by hesitation or self-doubt. When you truly embrace mortality, you shift from a perspective of dread to one of intentional living. Each day becomes a gift rather than a burden. You're not paralyzed by the unknown. You're energized to focus on what you can contribute, here and now. This, in essence, is the Stoic approach. Align your actions with your deeper principles and let the inevitable flow of time guide you to live more consciously. In many ways, accepting death and fate helps you accept life itself, messy, unpredictable, and occasionally heartbreaking as it may be. The recognition that everything ends imbues every beginning with greater significance. You learn to let go of pettiness, grudges, and the need to control outcomes that are never fully within your grasp. That emotional weight lightens when you accept that much of your journey will unfold beyond your commands. You still make choices, still exert effort to shape your destiny, but you do so with humility, knowing that all things eventually pass. This approach to mortality is a clear indicator of an unbreakable mindset, one that doesn't crumble at the thought of the end, but instead uses it to live more fully. A mind anchored in this understanding is neither reckless nor timid. It's simply rooted in the reality that time marches on whether we fear it or not. This acceptance opens the way to greater ease in handling day-to-day challenges. Yet, even if you can calmly face the ultimate certainty of death, life still throws curveballs that tempt you to complain or blame circumstance. Understanding how to adapt and grow stronger rather than getting stuck in negativity is another core aspect of an unbreakable mindset. We'll turn to that idea next. Sign number 5. You don't complain, you adapt. Complaining is weakness. Adapting is power. That's the heart of a mindset that refuses to be brought down by external conditions. We all know people who find fault in everything, blaming their bosses, parents, or even the weather for their troubles. It's an exhausting way to live, and what's worse is that it rarely solves the issues they complain about. On the other side, there are those who meet obstacles head-on, adjusting to new circumstances with a sense of calm determination. These individuals show us a different path, one that transforms challenges into fuel for growth instead of excuses. For stagnation, imagine someone stuck in a frustrating work environment. Maybe they have an overbearing supervisor or a team that never pulls its weight. Some people might spend their days venting to anyone who will listen, dwelling on the unfairness of the situation. Yes, it feels good momentarily to express that frustration, but it doesn't move the needle. Another approach is to look for possible improvements. Could this person propose new processes, seek out a different role, or even consider moving on to a place that values their skills more? By choosing action over complaint, they reclaim their sense of control. The Stoics had a simple yet profound lesson that speaks directly to this point. The obstacle is the way. In other words, hardships are not roadblocks. They're stepping stones toward becoming stronger and wiser. Instead of viewing a setback as an impenetrable wall, see it as an opportunity to develop perseverance or creativity. This mindset isn't about denying the pain or difficulty of the problem. It's about deciding that you won't let that pain reduce you to inaction. Each hardship becomes a chance to refine your resilience, much like a muscle that becomes stronger through repeated use. Think about a time in your own life when something didn't go according to plan. Maybe you missed out on a promotion you felt certain was yours, or an important relationship turned sour. The natural impulse might be to complain. Why me? Why now? Yet once the initial sting wears off, you face a choice. You can keep repeating how unfair it all is, or you can look at the situation and think, where do I go from here? That second question immediately shifts the focus to possibilities. It nudges you to take some kind of positive step, however small, rather than sinking into defeat. A helpful practice in cultivating this mindset is to go one full day without complaining. Whenever you feel tempted to voice a grievance, pause for a moment and consider how you might adapt instead. It doesn't mean bottling up all feelings. Sometimes sharing frustrations is healthy, but try to do it with the aim of finding solutions rather than just airing discontent. Notice how different your day feels when you approach problems with a mindset of adaptability. You might see that your energy shifts from dwelling on what's wrong to asking, what can I do about this? Stoics often remind us that we don't control much of what happens around us, but we do control how we respond. That's the key distinction. Do we spend our energy lamenting factors we can't change, or do we adjust our approach to make the best of a tough situation? When you learn to pivot rather than complain, you also become more valuable to those around you. People respect someone who can keep their head and find a way forward even in chaotic times. A person who constantly bemoans circumstances becomes draining to be around, whereas someone who remains composed and constructive can inspire hope in others. Adapting doesn't mean you ignore real problems. It means you recognize that complaining alone won't solve them. You acknowledge the obstacle and then figure out a way through, over or around it. In the process, you grow your problem-solving skills and build a reservoir of calm that helps you face unexpected complications in the future. Each situation that tests your patience or ingenuity turns into a training session for your mind, teaching you that no event needs to break you unless you allow it to. This practice, like many Stoic teachings, is straightforward, but not necessarily easy. You'll catch yourself slipping, grumbling about traffic or a minor inconvenience. The point is to catch it quickly and refocus on what you can do to make things better, or at least keep a level head. Over time, these small victories add up, and complaining loses its hold on you. You come to realize that every frustration holds the possibility of self-improvement, like an invitation to prove that you can rise above circumstances that once made you fume. Embodying this adaptive mindset cultivates a steady sense of confidence. You begin to trust your ability to handle whatever life throws your way, because you aren't wasting precious energy wishing problems didn't exist. You're using that energy to navigate them. This is a vital component of an unbreakable mindset, reminding you that when one door slams shut, another can still be opened, often leading to a path you didn't expect but are fully equipped to handle. Yet even if you learn to adapt rather than complain, life can still surprise you with situations that challenge your very core, and failure can feel devastating. The next sign tackles what happens when you confront setbacks head-on and refuse to let them define you. Sign number 6. You don't let failure break you. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. That statement can feel contradictory, especially if you've grown up seeing failure as something to fear, hide, or avoid at all costs. Yet those who cultivate an unbreakable mindset recognize that setbacks are stepping stones, not dead ends. Whenever you chase a goal or try something new, there's always a chance things won't go as planned. The real question is whether you'll view that setback as a reason to quit or as an opportunity to evolve. Picture Epictetus, who was born into slavery and spent a significant portion of his life without basic freedoms. Instead of letting that hardship define him, he studied philosophy whenever he could, developing the insights that would later shape Stoic thought. He eventually gained his freedom and went on to teach countless students, showing them how to face adversity with dignity and wisdom. Epictetus is often cited as a perfect example of rising above seemingly impossible limitations. He didn't see his early struggles as the final word on who he could become. He saw them as lessons that propelled him forward. The fact that his words still resonate today proves how powerful that perspective can be. Think back to a time when something important to you fell apart. Maybe it was a business venture, an academic pursuit, or a personal relationship. In the aftermath, it's common to feel disoriented, embarrassed, or even worthless. Many of us adopt a negative internal dialogue, saying things like, "This proves I'm not cut out for this," or "I shouldn't have tried." That self-defeating narrative might seem logical in the heat of the moment, but it misses the growth that failure can offer. Reflect on what went wrong and why. Was there a misunderstanding, a lack of preparation, or an oversight you can avoid next time? By shifting the focus to what you can learn, you turn a negative event into valuable experience. It helps to think of each failure as a teacher. Instead of burying your disappointment, you can pause, examine the situation, and ask, what can I learn from this? The answer might be that you need to prepare differently, develop a new skill, or adjust your attitude. Even if you find that you were pursuing the wrong goal in the first place, that realization can guide you toward a more fulfilling path. Failure, in that sense, becomes a form of clarity. It shows you what isn't working, so you can redirect your efforts more effectively. Take a moment to consider the successes you admire in others. Usually, those achievements sit atop a pile of earlier attempts that didn't go quite right. Some of the most celebrated inventors, artists, and leaders encountered failures that would shake most people's faith. Yet they pressed on, not because they were oblivious to setbacks, but because they chose to interpret each failure as data, a clue pointing them toward what might work better next time. That willingness to push forward in spite of disappointment is what sets apart those with an unbreakable mindset from those who give up too soon. It doesn't matter whether your setback is major or minor. What matters is how you choose to respond. You could let the frustration fester and define your self-image, or you could harness the experience to become more adaptable. If you lost a job opportunity, take the time to reassess your approach. Could you sharpen your interview skills, acquire new qualifications? Or maybe you realize that role wasn't truly a fit for your strengths, and a better match lies elsewhere. In each of these scenarios, you're transforming a hurdle into a chance for self-improvement. This shift in perspective doesn't happen overnight. You may need time to process disappointment, and that's okay. The key is not to remain stuck in a defeated mindset. Acknowledge the hurt. Let yourself feel it. But then pick yourself up and ask what the next step looks like. That's the Stoic way. Accept what has happened, then move forward with deliberate intention. One practical approach is to keep a failure log where you briefly note down what went wrong and how you responded. Over time, you'll see patterns in your behavior or in the types of mistakes you make. Perhaps you rush through important details when you're excited, or you hesitate too long when making decisions. Recognizing these tendencies can help you break out of self-defeating cycles. With each new insight, you become better equipped to handle the challenges that inevitably arise. Adopting this mindset is a declaration that you refuse to be broken by life's disappointments. It's a statement of resilience, a promise to yourself that you will keep moving, keep learning, and keep evolving. Failure stings, but it can also remind you of your capacity to grow beyond your current limits. Like Epictetus, you can turn your hardships into intellectual and spiritual capital that carries you forward, no matter what constraints you may face. Even if you've embraced the notion that failure is a teacher, there's another discipline that goes hand in hand with it: self-control and discipline in your day-to-day actions. Without that component, it's hard to sustain the momentum needed to transform setbacks into growth. Let's discuss how mastering discipline sets the stage for even greater resilience. So number 7, you are disciplined and self-controlled. The Stoics believed that discipline is the backbone of a well-lived life. Without self-control, even the most brilliant philosophies and grandest dreams remain empty words. It's easy to talk about virtues and self-improvement, but consistently acting on those principles requires a focused mind. Marcus Aurelius, despite being an emperor with limitless responsibilities, made time each day to write in his journal and reflect on his actions. He understood that true discipline begins with everyday habits, small choices that, over time, shape who we become. Now think about how your daily routine stacks up against the backdrop of modern distractions. You have social media feeds beckoning for attention, countless streaming platforms offering endless entertainment, and a steady stream of notifications tugging at your focus. It's not that any of these things are inherently bad, but they can fracture your concentration and eat away hours of your day before you even realize it. Stoics would argue that real freedom lies in being able to decide where your attention goes, rather than letting external forces dictate how you spend your time. Imagine waking up in the morning and instead of scrolling through messages and updates, you use those first quiet minutes to gather your thoughts, maybe plan your day, or read a few pages of a thought-provoking book. The difference is subtle at first, but it accumulates. That one decision can set a calmer, more intentional tone for the rest of your day. You're not immediately caught up in other people's opinions or anxieties. You're in charge of how you start your morning. If you make a habit of this, you'll notice you're less impulsive and more aware of how you direct your energy. Stoics knew that discipline also involves training your willpower. When you keep a promise to yourself, like exercising for half an hour or studying consistently, you build trust in your own abilities. Each time you resist the temptation to skip a planned task, you strengthen the habit of self-control. It's no different than building muscle by lifting weights. Your mind becomes more resilient with every instance of discipline you practice. When you finally come face to face with major life challenges, that reservoir of self-control helps you remain steady. One way to put this into action is by picking a specific distraction and cutting it out for 7 days. It could be social media, streaming shows, or any habit that routinely swallows your spare moments. At first, you might find yourself itching to check your phone or to indulge in that old routine. But if you stick with it, you'll discover just how much mental space and time you regain. Maybe you'll use those reclaimed moments to go for a short walk, call a friend, or dive into a project you've been putting off. The feeling of being in control of your schedule is empowering, a tangible result of choosing discipline over convenience. Consider how discipline and self-control spilled into every corner of a Stoic's life. They believed that greatness in small daily tasks led to greatness in larger responsibilities. Seneca wrote letters to a friend discussing how to handle wealth, fame, or misfortune calmly. These writings weren't just for show, they were daily exercises in reasoning and moral clarity. The act of writing helped him refine his ability to stick to his principles, no matter what was happening around him. It was a way to guard against complacency and ensure that he lived by the values he espoused. Self-control also means regulating your emotions, similar to what we discussed earlier. If you find yourself lashing out under stress, losing your temper, or dwelling on negative thoughts, discipline plays a huge role in breaking those patterns. You learn to pause instead of reacting on autopilot. You learn to speak from a place of calm rather than anger. It's not about denying your emotions, but rather guiding them toward a response that aligns with who you want to be. This intentional management of inner impulses can make a profound difference in how you handle conflicts or surprises. Like many aspects of Stoic philosophy, discipline is not a quick fix. It's an ongoing process that requires daily effort. You'll slip up here and there, maybe binge on a distraction or lose your cool in a stressful moment, but what counts is coming back to the practice. Each time you recommit, you reinforce the idea that your actions matter, that your choices shape your life, and that external pressures don't have the final say on how you spend your time. When you become disciplined and self-controlled, you carry an inner strength that sets you apart. You're not easily derailed by fleeting temptations or momentary impulses. This stability forms a solid foundation on which you can build every other virtue. It also prepares you for life's bigger tests when you might face genuine crisis or loss. At that point, the discipline you've honed in the smaller things becomes a strong shield against chaos. Yet, even with discipline holding your life together, there's another level to address: how you think logically rather than emotionally, especially when emotions threaten to cloud your judgment. That's the next step in constructing a mindset that's truly unshakable, and it's what we'll explore next. Sign number 8, you think logically, not emotionally. Emotions cloud judgment. Logic brings clarity. The Stoics believed that when intense feelings take the lead, rational thought often gets buried, setting you up for choices that can backfire. That doesn't mean you shut off your emotions. It means you maintain a healthy balance, using your mind to observe those swirling feelings without letting them make critical decisions for you. A moment of anger, fear, or even excitement can twist your perspective, shrinking your ability to see the bigger picture and pushing you into quick, impulsive actions. The Stoic philosophers often recommended something called the view from above technique. Picture yourself rising above your current situation, looking down at the scene as though you're watching a movie. Emotions like frustration or jealousy appear smaller from this elevated vantage point. By mentally zooming out, you turn a big, overwhelming problem into something more manageable. Marcus Aurelius wrote about how stepping back to see the broader context of your life, your city, and the world can help you understand that many issues, which feel huge in the moment, are actually fleeting. This technique allows your logical mind to regain control, reminding you that what you're experiencing is part of a much larger tapestry, one that stretches far beyond your immediate bubble. Imagine you're in a tense conversation with a friend or colleague. Emotions surge when tempers flare, and it's easy to say something you'll regret the moment it leaves your mouth. Now consider pausing for a second, taking a deep breath, and mentally stepping above the scene. You might observe that your friend is actually anxious about something else, or that you're carrying stress from an earlier event. Recognizing these factors changes the narrative. Instead of hurling accusations or doubling down on a defensive stance, you might identify a solution or even share an empathetic word that diffuses the tension. In that brief moment of detachment, your logical mind gains the upper hand. People often worry that thinking logically means becoming cold or unfeeling. Stoicism, however, doesn't advocate turning into a robot. It's about placing reason and emotional understanding on the same team, with reason acting as a steady guide. Emotions are valuable signals, telling you when something feels off or dangerous. Ignoring them completely isn't the goal. Rather, you want to interpret them thoughtfully before deciding how to respond. That's what keeps you from being swept away by an emotional current you might regret later. A practical way to cultivate this skill is to pause whenever you feel your blood pressure rising or your heart beating faster. Before reacting, ask, what's the logical response here? That single question can shift your focus from raw feeling to calm reasoning. Instead of lashing out at someone who cuts you off in traffic, you might realize that your anger changes nothing. The other driver is likely gone from your day in moments, but you'll carry that agitation with you if you let yourself remain wrapped up in it. By choosing a logical response, you preserve your peace of mind and avoid letting a minor incident spoil a large portion of your day. This approach to life doesn't just help with conflict. It also shapes how you make important decisions. Maybe you've been offered a new job with uncertain prospects, and you're excited but also terrified. If you let fear dominate, you might stick to your comfort zone. If you're only guided by excitement, you might jump in without proper consideration. Taking a step back to weigh the pros and cons logically, while also acknowledging the emotional pull, helps you find a balanced approach. You can embrace the opportunity while planning for potential risks. By blending practical analysis with self-awareness, you end up making choices that better align with both your hopes and realities. When you get into the habit of thinking logically rather than emotionally, you'll notice you waste less energy on pointless drama. You don't tumble down the spiral of regrets after a heated conversation, nor do you live in constant anxiety over imagined catastrophes. You still feel whatever emotions arise, but you control their direction instead of being pushed around by them. That distinction is huge. Logic isn't about being dispassionate, it's about guiding your passion in a constructive way. A logical mindset stops you from burning bridges or sabotaging yourself, turning intense feelings into signposts rather than roadblocks. As your rational side becomes stronger, it works in harmony with your emotional side, creating a more stable and insightful outlook on life. This stability is vital for maintaining an unbreakable mindset, one that can ride the highs and lows without losing sight of your values or goals. Yet, even the calmest, most logical mind will encounter moments of intense stress that challenge its limits. That's when you discover whether you can remain unwavering or if you'll crack under pressure. Let's take a closer look at what it means to be unbreakable when the stakes are at their highest. Sign number 9. You are unbreakable. Under pressure. Stoics believed that genuine strength emerges when life tests your limits. They saw struggle not as a reason to collapse, but as a stage on which you prove your resilience. Pressures can come from all directions: financial strains, relationship, conflicts, unexpected tragedies. Yet how you respond in those moments reveals more about your inner fortitude than any comfortable stretch of time ever could. Marcus Aurelius faced relentless challenges as a Roman emperor, from barbarian invasions on the empire's borders to political intrigue at the core of his leadership. Amid this turbulence, he kept a calm and reflective mindset, constantly journaling his thoughts. He didn't resent the weight on his shoulders. He accepted it as part of his role, a way to refine his judgment and cultivate the virtues he held. Instead of letting external pressures drive him to despair, he reframed them as opportunities to practice patience, wisdom, and self-control. Consider a moment in your own life when pressure felt almost unbearable. Maybe it was a deadline at work that collided with family responsibilities, or a personal crisis that threatened to unravel your peace. In such moments, it's tempting to shut down, to complain about how unfair life can be, or to retreat into a shell of worry. Stoics would urge you to pause, take a breath, and ask yourself what this situation can teach you. Is it a chance to develop better time management, to practice emotional regulation, or to learn the art of asking for help when you truly need it? When you see pressure as something that can be molded into personal growth, you stop being a victim of circumstances. Instead, you become an active participant in your own development. That's not to say the pressure magically goes away, but your perspective changes. Even if you can't alter the events around you, you can still decide how you respond. You can choose courage over fear, resolve over resignation, and learning over lamenting. Each time you do this, you strengthen the mental muscle that refuses to break under strain. A powerful example of this mindset is someone who loses a job unexpectedly. It's easy to view unemployment as a devastating blow, and it certainly can be daunting. Yet people who reframe the situation might see it as a moment to sharpen their skills, pivot to a different career, or rediscover a passion they had long neglected. That doesn't remove the hardship, but it transforms what could be a crippling setback into a motivating force. Over time, you might even look back and realize that losing that job opened a door you never would have ventured through otherwise. The principle is similar for athletes pushing through intense physical training. The pressure of competition or the relentless routine of practice can be overwhelming. Those who crack under that weight often dread the demands of training. Those who rise to the challenge see the pressure as their proving ground. Instead of focusing on discomfort, they focus on how it shapes their endurance, skill, and discipline. That shift in perspective doesn't remove the pain, but directs it toward a purpose. Ask yourself how you currently view pressure. Do you see it as a threat to your well-being, or do you see it as a tool to forge your inner steel? When life throws down a challenge, remind yourself to reframe pressure as an opportunity to prove your strength. This doesn't mean you ignore the stress or pretend it's easy. It means you accept that stress is part of growth and you meet it with a steady heart instead of sinking into panic. Every person has a breaking point, but the Stoics believed you could push that threshold farther than you might imagine. By regularly facing difficulties, you learn to operate under strain without losing your sense of self. You develop coping strategies, perhaps through guided reflection, physical exercise, or methodical problem solving, that allow you to manage what once felt overwhelming. That's the essence of being unbreakable. It's not about never feeling pressure, but about not letting that pressure define or destroy you. Of course, there's a limit to what any individual can endure alone, and knowing when to seek help can be part of demonstrating true resilience. Even so, the critical difference is that you don't surrender to despair when challenges tower before you. Instead, you adapt, strategize, and keep your inner flame alive. That quiet determination is what Stoics revered as the mark of genuine fortitude. Maintaining composure under intense stress requires a clear mind, one free from constant mental chatter and negative self-talk. The next element of an unbreakable mindset revolves around mastering your own thoughts, ensuring they don't run rampant and undermine your stability. Let's see how that final piece of the puzzle fits into the bigger picture. Sign number 10. You control your thoughts. Stoic mindfulness revolves around the idea that the human mind, when left unchecked, can become a source of unnecessary suffering. Epictetus famously taught, "It's not events that hurt us, but our perception of them." This observation underscores a profound truth. What disturbs us the most often isn't the situation itself, but the stories we spin around it. A challenging project at work doesn't necessarily lead to anxiety. It's the negative self-talk, fears of failure or worries about judgment that amplifies stress. Once you realize that your internal dialogue shapes your experience, you begin to see how much power you actually hold. Think about a time you went to bed feeling uneasy, replaying an uncomfortable conversation or a setback from your day. Maybe you lay awake, imagining worst-case scenarios and berating yourself for not handling things better. The event might have lasted only a few minutes, yet the mental loop it triggered lingered far longer. That's the mind in action, spinning tales and fueling emotions that can outlast the original problem. Stoics recognize that taming this mental spiral is a key step to achieving real peace. Controlling your thoughts doesn't mean denying their existence or forcing yourself to think only positive things. Instead, it's about observing what crosses your mind and choosing how to respond. When an anxious thought arises, you might notice it for what it is, a momentary worry rather than an absolute truth. You acknowledge it, allow it to pass, and then guide your focus back to something constructive. It's a bit like training a wild horse. You're not punishing it or pretending it doesn't have its own impulses. You're calmly teaching it to follow a better path. We all have days when negative thoughts flood our minds, making it seem as though we're at the mercy of our own doubts. The Stoics would encourage stepping back during these moments and asking, what's actually happening right now? And how am I interpreting it? If your boss gives you tough feedback at work, it can feel like a personal attack, but it may simply be a push to grow. If a friend forgets to return a text, you might interpret that as a sign of indifference, when in reality, they're just caught up in their own busy day. Recognizing these mental leaps gives you the chance to correct your course before you sink into resentment or self-pity. One straightforward exercise is to set aside 5 minutes each day to observe and control your thoughts. You can do this in the morning, in the evening, or whenever you find a quiet moment. Sit comfortably and pay attention to your breathing. Notice how thoughts wander in, random memories, worries about the future, or even silly daydreams. Instead of clinging to them, let them drift. If a troubling thought appears, you acknowledge it with a simple mental note, something like, "I see you, but I'm choosing not to dwell on you." Then you guide your attention back to your breath or any point of focus you've selected. This may feel awkward at first, but with practice, you'll gain a clearer sense of how your mind jumps from one idea to another, often stoking your emotions. Along the way, over time, that 5-minute exercise can transform how you approach nearly everything else in life. When a moment of stress or anger flares up, you'll recognize the familiar pattern. A thought or perception triggers an emotion, and that emotion tries to run the show. But you'll be more prepared to step in, saying, "I don't have to spiral. I can pause, reflect, and decide if this reaction truly serves me." That small act of awareness can keep you from saying hurtful words in an argument or catastrophizing. Every minor hiccup, Epictetus would argue that freedom begins in the mind. No matter your circumstances, you can choose how you interpret the events of your life. It's not about dismissing real problems. It's about preventing your thoughts from magnifying them into something overwhelming. When you make a habit of this mental discipline, you might notice your stress levels drop. You become less susceptible to negative influences because you've nurtured the ability to filter and challenge the messages spinning around in your head. This practice also helps you maintain steadiness in relationships. We've all experienced misunderstandings that arise from assuming someone's motives. By controlling your thoughts, you pause and question those assumptions. Are they really intending to insult me, or am I reading too deeply into this comment? In doing so, you give empathy and clarity a chance to flourish before you react. That shift in perspective can diffuse conflicts and strengthen your connections with others. Ultimately, controlling your thoughts is about recognizing where your true power lies. You don't rule the broader world, nor can you dictate how others behave, but you do command your interpretations, your focus, and your state of mind. That's a far greater power than most realize, because it shapes your experience of everything else. When you master this, you become less prone to being tossed around by external circumstances, finding a center of calm that remains solid despite the storms of life. Reaching this level of inner composure isn't a quick process. It's a lifelong exercise in vigilance and humility. You'll slip from time to time, let certain thoughts dominate you for a moment, or fall back into old patterns. The difference is that you'll recognize these missteps for what they are and have the tools to realign yourself. Bit by bit, your mind becomes your ally rather than your adversary, guiding you toward a life rooted in understanding and balance. You've just explored 10 powerful signs of an unbreakable mindset, one guided by Stoic philosophy. By managing your emotions, embracing discomfort, letting go of empty validation, and taking charge of your thoughts, you can profoundly shift how you face life's challenges. Most people will watch something like this and move on, but you're here because you want to strengthen your mental resilience, and that truly is rare. Now think about which of these signs already resonates with you. Are you learning to stay calm under pressure? Perhaps you're practicing discipline or finding new ways to adapt. Share your reflections in the comments. I'd love to know how these ideas are shaping your perspective. If these insights helped you, give this video a like and consider subscribing. It ensures more people discover the transformative power of Stoic wisdom. When you subscribe, turn on the bell so you never miss future discussions on living with calm resilience. Thank you for joining this conversation. Here's to building an unbreakable mindset, one choice at a time.